Good morning. We are here at the top of Chandler Park, or just the overlook, I suppose. I'm going to try to finish this off on this chapter 1 here. We're on page 6 of chapter 1, which is called something. Investigating Personal Attitudes About Anger. So, what are your expectations? Children learn to fear anger when the behaviors demonstrated by angry adults results in physical or emotional pain. They learn that something unpleasant follows when someone is angry. This conditioning continues throughout life, and the expectation of this unpleasantness occurs every time someone is angry. First question for you to answer. When you were a child, what happened to you when others were angry? What did you think? And the last one for this part is, what did you feel? All right. When you were a child, what happened to you when others were angry? My answer was, my entire world was shaken, being turned into objects. Under what are your expectations? What did you think? I wrote, I was confused. I wanted to control them and make it stop. And the last question, what did you feel? My answers were hurt, afraid, helpless, and excited. Again, this is an anger workbook, so it's meant for you to write out or think or figure out or tell a loved one, however you go about it. All right, the next question here on page 6 is, how did you respond? A person's basic style of response to another's anger develops during childhood. This style modifies and expands with day-to-day experience in handling situations encountered as an adult. The basic style remains as a child when an adult's anger was directed toward you. You okay, big boy? All right. Here are the questions for how did you respond. First one is, what did you think? The second one is, what did you feel? What did you do? And how did you evaluate yourself afterwards? All right. How did you respond? On the answers, what did you think? I wrote, I was helpless. What did you feel? I wrote, overwhelmed, small, and victimized, which is a fancy word. On what did you do? I have freeze, fight, nothing, or agree, which is technically fawning. And then the last one, how did you evaluate yourself afterwards? I was upset with myself because I couldn't control anything that other people did. All right. Like I said, this was my book, and I wrote a whole bunch of stuff in it like 25 years ago. And I'm shocked at how much stuff is not so very different. All right, the next one on page 7 here is, how do you respond to anger? People react to anger in others. This reaction produces a behavioral response Both reaction and response were learned during childhood. As individuals grow older, they develop adult versions of this early style. Now, the 3 questions for how did you respond to anger? So how did you respond to other people's anger now? What are your internal reactions, thoughts, and feelings? And the final one is, what is your external response or your actions? All right, so some of my answers here are, how do you respond to other people's anger? Fight, freeze, wait, and leave. I didn't use full sentences. All right. And then, what are your internal reactions, which are my thoughts and feelings? And it's, I guess I wrote, I will never win, so don't try. I make another's anger worse. Which, as we've already learned so far, one cannot do that. All right, what is my external response or my actions? I walk away and I begin to ignore the angry person. That's kind of sad, I know that. But I also had a lot of siblings, and ignoring people who are throwing fits is, anyway, it sounds like I'm explaining myself. Okay, back to this point. Okay, the next question is, what is your fantasy response? After you have been involved in an angry episode in which someone else acted out anger, what is your fantasy of what you said or did? Alright, and that's the only question for that one. What is your fantasy response? The next one is, what is the ideal response? In your mind, what is an ideal, healthy response to another's anger? Oh, I wrote down the correct answer here. The process of conflict resolution is, you say, I say, I feel when you, and I would like it if instead you did. And you have to listen first. All right, so on this page we had, how do you respond to anger? What is your fantasy response? What is the ideal response? I think some of those are hard to answer until you've read some of the other chapters of the book, but here we go. What your answers show about attitudes. Now that you have completed the exercises, you have focused energy and spent time on your experiences with angry feelings. Ouch. You have looked from many directions at your own anger and your responses to other people's anger. Your answers are meaningful indicators of your fundamental assumptions. You may be thinking, I already know what my attitudes are about anger. As you read on, however, you may be surprised to discover a difference between what you think your attitudes are and what your answers suggest. More often than not, our strongest attitudes are those most deeply hidden. This defense occurs even in highly trained counselors who claim that they believe anger to be a positive, normal emotion. After studying their answers to the exercises, how would you describe anger, and what is the ideal response? Many therapists realize that their underlying attitudes about angry feelings are very negative. Because these hidden attitudes show themselves in behaviors, they exert a powerful influence over interactions with others. Therefore, it is important to bring them to light. Only then can steps be taken to minimize their control. Oh, oh, oh. There comes that sun. Let's see if I can get it zoomed in there. There it is. Thank you for being with me, letting me read to you. I appreciate you. Okay, the next part is what makes you angry? If you agreed with the entire list, what makes you angry, you're in the company of many hundreds of people who helped construct the list. Maybe you're a person who has said, I never get angry. It's a waste of energy. It doesn't change anything, so why bother? If so, what you are saying is that there has never been anything or anyone, yourself included, important enough to protect, defend, or fight for. I don't think that's true. More likely you have felt angry and didn't realize it. If you didn't agree that prejudice, child abuse, and injustice make you angry, and if you don't take offense when people cheat you or ignore you, then there is a good chance that you believe anger is bad or dangerous or hurtful. This belief is so strong and its resultant fear so great that your anger remains hidden even from yourself. For it is at these times when anger is not only okay but necessary for your well-being or the well-being of someone else. How would you describe anger? Most, if not all, of the descriptive words from this exercise are negative in tone. They connote a danger that is either overt or just below the very thin layer of human control. They suggest that anger is injurious, harmful, and painfully potent. If you agree with all or any of the descriptive words in the list, then you see anger as unpleasant and hurtful. On some level, you fear anger. Even if you added to the list some positive descriptive words, such as energizing, motivating, or constructive, those words would be minimal compared to the number of negative words. Many people say that they don't think anger is bad, but upon closer examination, their behavior indicates otherwise. I encountered a vivid example of this when I was interviewed for a local newspaper. The sun is so beautiful. Okay, where is I? Many people say that they don't think anger is bad, but upon closer examination, their behavior indicates otherwise. I encountered a vivid example of this when I was interviewed for a local newspaper. For over an hour, the reporter and I talked about the virtues of anger. He nodded and verbally agreed with what I said throughout the interview. I told about an angry incident from my life to illustrate a point. When the article was written, the reporter stated, "Even Mrs. Bilodeau is not immune from anger." It was clear to me that, although the reporter may agree on an intellectual level that anger is okay, somewhere deeper within, she believes anger is bad. Immune means protected from disease or exempt. The reporter's words gave away her underlying attitude about anger. If anger is good, why would I want immunity from it? When looked at together, the first two exercises, what makes you angry and how would you describe anger, explain the human conflict engendered by anger. On the one side is the reality that anger is so common that people normally feel it many times every day. On the other side are deeply entrenched attitudes that say angry feelings are bad, hurtful, and dangerous. A person is continuously required to experience a feeling he deems harmful to his well-being. In resolving this conflict, people most often find themselves doing one of three things. Oh my God, it's beautiful. All right. They never feel anger. A highly developed defense system does not allow anger to emerge. It remains hidden until an experience is so powerful that the anger bursts out. And the next one, feeling anger and not expressing it. When the anger asserts itself, it is usually misdirected or excessive for the situation. And the last one, feeling anger and expressing it in an aggressive, hurtful way. Each of these responses hurts the self or others and therefore compounds the conflict of reaffirming the belief that anger is bad, dangerous, or hurtful. I know it's beautiful, but I'm going to put this here in case you want to take a picture of it. Come on, baby. There we go. The very short list of probably things that don't help. Looks like a painting. At least to me. Alright, what are your expectations? This exercise shows how much power is given to anger in an individual's life. Three and a half pages left, but probably not 3.5 amounts of time. So, thank you again for being with me. If a youngster witnesses explosive, destructive angry behavior at home, then they come to expect that everyone's anger is violent. An angry incident means someone or something is going to be hurt. Verbally abusive episodes encountered as a child result in the expectation that when anger occurs, someone will be put down and emotionally brutalized. If anger is expressed with cold silence or harsh glares or pointed indifference, a child hears the powerful message: You are not important. I don't love you. You don't exist. You're not worthy of a response. This silent treatment is abusive, for it damages a person's self-esteem. If you have experienced any of these skewed behaviors, then you have been taught that anger is dangerous, and the bearer of angry feelings is bad. The frequency, intensity, and duration of painful anger episodes in your childhood determine the amount of power you bestow on anger, the level of fears you have about it, and the harshness with which you judge the person who is angry, yourself or another. If your parents didn't allow you to see their expressions of anger, your ideas about this emotion are probably confused. Their behavior was a strong statement that angry feelings don't exist in adults. You grew up with no model for understanding your own anger. You had no label for it. You had no way of knowing how to express it or respond to it. If you believed that your parents didn't feel anger, you might have wondered what is wrong with those who do. In fact, as an adult, you may still find anger confusing. And the next question, how did you respond? How do you respond? These two exercises help illustrate the fact that people's problems with anger occur because they are adults, coping from a child's perspective. In other words, they try to respond to adult situations from a child's position of vulnerability and powerlessness. Children depend upon adults for the basic necessities of life, for food, shelter, love, acceptance, approval, and self-identity. When these adults act out their angry feelings in hurtful ways, children see their necessities threatened. Survival is at stake. The danger is immediate, the fear intense. Did you believe the anger was your fault? Did you respond by trying harder to do right, to be perfect? Or did you rebel and fight back? Did you hide in order to avoid angry scenes? Did you see the world as a place where you did not belong? Did you evaluate yourself as bad, stupid, or not good enough? As an adult, if you look closely, you will find the same pattern. For instance, if your response as a child was to try harder, now when your boss expresses anger because of a mistake, you probably put forth more effort to make sure it doesn't happen again. If the error was that of someone else, you either help that person or act for him next time. Your motivator is to do the job right in order to avoid anger. If you withdrew as a child, you have probably learned to withdraw mentally as an adult. You may still seek physical isolation when possible. Situations from which you cannot physically escape, you know how to escape in your mind. Even in a crowd of people, you are alone. And if you fought back as a child, you probably do the same now. You may even find yourself fighting other people's battles. This response might be seen as a social attribute, except that you have learned to fight in an aggressively destructive manner. If you have been responding to anger in any of these ways for 20, 30, or 40 years, you may have discovered that they are ineffective and costly. No matter how perfect you become, others are still angry. It costs your self-esteem. You are never good enough. The perfect housewife finds that her husband nevertheless feels angry. No matter how aggressive you are in fighting, you lose because people with more authority or bigger and louder beat you. When you beat others with less authority, acting like the boss who berates his workers, for example, everyone sees you as the abuser, the bully. The cost, your self-esteem. Either way, you lose. No matter how hard you try, the only way to hide from anger is to withdraw totally from the world. The cost, your humanity. That's a high price to pay because we are social creatures who need interaction with others. Alright, almost done. I know it's long, but I've been reading to all these birds apparently sitting in this tree over here. They were perfectly quiet. Alright, what is your fantasy response? Normally, after an angry exchange in which there is no resolution, a person mentally relives the incident in solitude. During this process, the scene is embellished with ideas of what could have been done, should have been done, or might be done next time. Did your fantasy involve violence? The violence should be physical, such as striking or maiming. It could be emotional, such as clever put-down, sarcasm, or telling the person off. Somehow in your recreated scenario, you struck back at the angry individual. If so, you may believe anger to be a form of power, a weapon. Seeing anger as an attack on you, you counter-attack. An angry incident becomes a power struggle. In your fantasy, you may use anger to come out on top. Perhaps you see another person's anger as disapproval, a statement that you are wrong. Your embellished script allows you the last word, the winning blow. You're not wrong. The other person is. Or perhaps you permit yourself anger only when you're in the right. Anger takes on a right versus wrong quality. It is a judgment. Did your fantasy involve placating the angry person, somehow getting them to stop being angry? Did you envision yourself storming out of the room, slamming the doors you left? If so, you may see anger as a device of punishment, a potentially hazardous weapon that produces physical harm or emotional destruction. You want to stop it before it occurs, or get out of its way to avoid harm. In your fantasy, did you put yourself down? Perhaps you thought, I'm wrong, I am no good, I shouldn't have made them angry, it's my fault, I'll never do this right. If so, you may believe that a person's anger is controlled by external forces. You also seem to view anger as an evaluation of self. Again, anger has become a means of disapproval, of judgment. All right, and then the final section, and we are done with chapter 1. I've appreciated following. Okay, what is the ideal response? People who answer this question in my workshops most commonly propose these responses. Leave the room. Remove yourself until the angry person becomes rational. Stay calm and maintain control. And let the person ventilate. Although these choices seem reasonable, consider the implications. Feeling that you must leave an angry person suggests an attitude that anger is dangerous. Humans run from things they fear, things they think will be painful, hurtful, or fatal. The idea of removing yourself until the person is rational stems from the belief that anger either comes from or creates irrationality. Anger equals insanity. If you must remain calm and maintain control, what are you controlling? Yourself? The other person? The situation? What terrible thing happens if you don't stay calm and in control? If you suggest allowing the angry person to ventilate, you present a vivid picture of anger as steam in a pressure cooker. It is hot, pressurized, and explosive. I cannot see. There we go. Okay. It's hot, pressurized, and explosive. If a valve isn't turned to let some steam escape, a catastrophe will occur. This whole idea of ventilation stems from the theory that people stockpile anger in a reservoir. When the reservoir gets too full, it spills over in the form of an aggressive incident. Letting the anger out lowers the reservoir and avoids an aggressive episode. If you have ever known a person who is often explosive with his anger, you can understand the illogic of this whole theory. The reservoir should be lowered with each explosion. If the person explodes often enough, the reservoir should run dry. Yet he keeps exploding. In fact, if you look closely, you discover that with time these incidents increase. Misinformation about anger is often presented in subtle behavioral ways without anyone stopping to realize what's being taught. I was at a friend's house when her daughter began acting out. My friend's husband asked the girl to go upstairs and watch TV. She ignored her father and continued to be loud and disruptive. Finally, he took her by the shoulders, looking her directly in the eye, and in a menacing voice said, "Daddy's getting angry." The child turned and went upstairs. The immediate result seemed to be success, for the father. Unfortunately for the child, anger has become a threat. Something bad happens when someone is angry. She has also been taught that she is responsible for other people's anger. Are these lessons true? She won't even consider the question because to her, they are a reality. And her reality will be validated many times over by her father and other adults who blame and threaten her when they're angry. She will continue to believe in this reality and act accordingly throughout her life unless something intervenes which forces her to question its validity. Even then, she will probably find it difficult to judge false what seemed real for so long. You may find yourself in that position now because the lessons you have learned about anger are pervasive and deeply entrenched. We all are taught these lessons at a young age. We learn them exponentially, and they are continually validated throughout our lives by others who had learned the same lessons. Consequently, you may never have thought a question thought to question the accuracy of the information. While doing the exercises and reading the commentary, perhaps you discovered that you hold many of the ideas and attitudes described in this first chapter. You may be ready to argue that these attitudes are what anger is all about. You may be ready to argue that these attitudes are what anger is all about. That the beliefs you've maintained for many years are right. They have brought you this far. They may be right for you. For the time being, do not worry about right or wrong. Instead, consider whether you are satisfied with the way you handle anger, your own and others. Does your anger make you more effective as a human being? Do you feel okay with yourself after an angry episode? If not, then some changes are in order. And the place to start is by informing yourself about anger so that you can view it from a different, less frightening perspective. I know this one was long, but we finished chapter 1. I'll start back up with 4. Now I'm kind of jumping around, but I do what I want. It's so beautiful. Okay, I've been reading to you again from the Anger Workbook. I'm at Chandler Park on the hilltop, enjoying the beauty. Thank you for letting me share my books with you. I appreciate you. Oh, I'm going to add a little side note. I know it's long, but this will be the reward for making it this far. Is that I found, I'm sure there's lots of different backgrounds on anger, but I did learn in the past year or two that sometimes when people are mad and they think that that's the time to be their form of honest. Like, when someone gets mad, that's when they say all this stuff they wouldn't normally say or what have you. And then there's an entirely different group of people who, when they're mad, they just kind of run their mouth and say all kinds of stuff. And I didn't know that that's quite a thing to come up, against, is that when two people are angry, one person's just running their mouth and the other person's saying their truth. Yeah. I didn't know that people could just get mad and say stupid things. I don't know why I didn't know that. I thought when people were mad, they told the truth. So that's quite a difference in perspective and misunderstanding. So thank you again. I appreciate you. I hope you have a beautiful day.